Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a quick check of today's highlights. Concerns are rising about the safety of subways and trains as Korea's unionized railway workers enter their 24th day of strike, the longest on record. The European Central Bank meets on Thursday to discuss its monetary policy and whether to extend the bank's bond buying program that's set to expire early next year. We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. The nation's railway strike has broken new records. While there haven't been major disruptions in railway services, the prolonged strike is expected to bring about massive financial losses. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
It's the longest on record. The nation's unionized railway workers entered the 24th day of strike on Thursday. This breaks a previous record of 23 days, but Korea's national railroad operator Korail says trains are running more frequently than during the past walkout, despite a higher participation rate this time. It says operations are at nearly 83% of usual levels, almost 6 percentage points higher than in 2013. In contrast, freight trains are running at just 40% of normal levels, causing a disruption in the nation's logistics network. The strike began back on September 27th in protest against the adoption of a performance-based wage system. Korail estimates losses from the strike will reach around $30 million due to the dip in train operations, as well as the additional labor costs from hiring substitute workers. The operator has been making up for the labor shortfall by hiring short-term contract workers since last month and has vowed to take on as many as 3,000 if necessary. And amid rising safety concerns as relatively inexperienced contract workers are left to fill in, Korail says it will employ 500 regular employees, the first time the company has taken such a move during a strike. It has also been stepping up field training for substitute workers to ensure safety and pairing them up with regular Korail workers during rush hour. The operator has urged unionized workers to end the strike and return to work, saying it can't be considered legitimate if it's putting people's safety at risk. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Third quarter earnings of Korea's big three shipbuilders are likely to be in the black, despite sagging orders industry-wide. Korea Investment and Securities says Hyundai Heavy Industries is expected to post the largest operating profit among the three at $303 million and sales of $8.5 billion. Samsung Heavy Industries is forecast to post an operating profit of some $52 million, while Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering is projected to log around $26 million in earnings. The better-than-expected performance is largely attributed to the government-led corporate restructuring that has taken effect and the shipbuilders' decisions to sell off assets. The companies will begin announcing their quarterly earnings later this month. And sales at Korea's duty-free stores may top the 10 trillion won mark, or $8.8 billion for the first time this year. Korea Customs Service says sales at 50 duty-free stores nationwide have already reached $7.9 billion as of September, roughly 37% higher than the first 9 months of last year. This is largely due to heavy purchasing from Chinese tourists, who made up almost half of the total foreign visitors to Korea as of August. While foreigners accounted for less than half of the customer base, their per capita spending was an average $350, more than 3 times that of local consumers. Lawmakers at the National Assembly will begin reviewing the budget bill for 2017 starting next week. But with the rival lawmakers at odds after clashing during the parliamentary audit over a number of issues, Korea's finance minister is worried that the budget won't get approved on time. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's finance minister Yoo Il-ho highlighted the importance of approving the nation's budget bill in a timely manner.
I asked that the National Assembly pass the 2017 budget bill on time so the budget, which is aimed at boosting the economy and creating jobs, may be executed from the beginning of the year without any disruptions.
While figuratively describing the government's financial affairs as a heart that's been beating to help revitalize the economy, Yu expressed the importance of managing government finances, calling on the parliament to review the bill by the legal deadline of December 2nd. He added that despite looming uncertainties at home and abroad, like the ongoing corporate restructuring drive, unionized strikes, and the unknown effects of an anti-corruption law on consumption, the country should work to bolster the economy through additional spending in the fourth quarter. The finance minister also explained the government's plan to submit a bill on fiscal soundness by the end of the month. The bill is aimed at preventing the buildup of exorbitant budgets by requiring the central and local governments, as well as public institutions, to devise plans for more efficient spending and put them in motion. It'll also include receiving financial assessment on the execution of those plans. Although the country's fiscal health is in relatively good condition when compared with other OECD member nations, Yu said Korea should further solidify its fiscal soundness so that it can maintain flexibility in the face of changing financial demands in the future. As of last year, Korea's government debt to GDP ratio stood at 37.9%, significantly lower than the OECD average of around 115%. Speaking on the prospects for economic growth, the finance minister showed confidence, saying that the fourth quarter will not post negative growth. He added that although Q4 performance may not be as strong as that of the previous quarter, Samsung's Galaxy Note 7 crisis, as well as the protracted automaker strikes, won't cause enough damage to drive growth into negative territory. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
The number of economically active foreign residents here in Korea is growing and has now exceeded 1 million. Statistics Korea data shows that foreigners working or looking for work added up to 1,005,000 people as of the month of May. Now, this marks an on-year rise of 1.9%. Overall, foreigners accounted for 3.6% of Korea's employed, remaining the same as last year. Most, or 45%, were working in manufacturing, followed by the retail, hospitality, and service sectors. By nationality, nearly 46% were Chinese nationals of Korean descent, followed by Vietnamese and ethnic Chinese. With the European Central Bank set to hold its monetary policy meeting on Thursday, eyes are on whether the bank will extend its massive bond buying program, which is set to expire this coming March. Now, earlier this week, there were reports that policymakers may be considering tapering or phasing out the program, spooking investors. And to tell us more about what we can expect from the meeting, Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
So this tapering and when it might start is likely to be the elephant in the room when the ECB meets on Thursday. Now, tell us more about this.
Well, tapering is an exit strategy of quantitative easing. European Central Bank maintains its policy mix of zero call rate and money supply of 80 billion euro on monthly basis. Okay. So tapering is about the second policy. That means they are decreasing money supply through less purchase of the bonds from the market.
And of course, this comes as the bank's asset buying scheme is set to expire coming March. So at this point, we're wondering how successful has the bank's quantitative easing program been in boosting its economy?
Well, unfortunately, it was not successful at all. If we take a look at economic figures of the Eurozone's economic growth rate in the third quarter is only disappointing 0.3%. And the inflation rate is another disappointing 0.4% with target inflation rate of the 2%. So that means Mr. Draghi, the chairman of the European Central Bank, was unsuccessful in recovering economy with 1.7 trillion euro money supply.
Now, while most analysts do expect the central bank to, extend its quantitative easing program beyond the March deadline, it's still spooked markets and its investors. Why so?
That is because the possibility of the tapering is not expected in the market. The financial market only considers unexpected information. But this time, there was serious conflicts between European Central Bank and German side, Central Bank of the Germany, which is Bundesbank. Actually, German side is kind of unhappy with extending quantitative easing because the new money supply is pretty much focused on certain European countries.
Now, so if the ECB decides to phase out, then what kind of impact would that have on markets and bonds? And also, what are the chances of us actually seeing this quantitative easing program being tapered?
Well, as we talked about, tapering comes with higher interest rate and less money supply. So that means it has negative impacts on financial market, both of the bonds market and equity markets. But regarding the possibility of the tapering, the growing concern is there's no much bonds remaining in the market to be purchased by European central banks. European Central Bank has been very aggressive in purchasing bonds in the market. So if there's no new supply of the bonds from the market, there could be natural tapering from the market side.
So it's going to happen kind of gradually
Exactly.
over the next year.
Exactly.
All right, well, experts have pointed to the U.S. Fed's taper tantrum back in 2013 as an example that we could look to just in case in order to prepare for a possible tapering by the ECB. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, when U.S. Federal Reserve decided to get out of the quantitative easing in May 2013, that gave a big impact on financial market. For example, the U.S. Treasury bonds 10-year maturity yield has been increased by 2%, and S&P 500 return has been decreased by 10% in a single month. So if European Central Bank decide to go to tapering, that can give larger impacts because the economic situation of the Eurozone is much worse than that of the United States in 2013.
And it's globally, the economy is sluggish, very
Exactly.
much so. Well, then if the ECB decides to taper, then what kind of impact will this have on the Korean economy?
Well, I think it will be more difficult for Bank of Korea to decrease interest rate because we have two pressure to increase interest rate out of the country. One is U.S. Federal Reserve interest rate hikes expected in December of this year. And if, in addition to that, if European Central Bank decide to taper with higher interest rate, that's going to be another pressure to increase interest rate.
So more pressure definitely on the
Exactly.
Bank of Korea. Now, central banks around the world have been easing monetary policies and pumping more money into its economy for some time now, since
Right.
last year. So how long do you think this trend will last globally?
Well, I believe it is too early to talk about that, but what I can say is quantitative easing of Bank of Japan and European Central Bank and U.S. Federal Reserve is something unprecedented and uncharted policy experiments. So we know that sometime in the future, they will go back to the normal monetary policy. But what we know as of now is without seeing significant signs of economic recovery, they never go back to normal monetary policy. So it will take at least 2 to 3 years from now on.
That's quite a long time.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
My pleasure.
Perhaps the next frontier for smartphone feature is controlling smart homes. A couple of Korean construction companies are already making strides to connect elements of the home to your smartphone. Our Eunice Kim explains.
The door to the apartment tower opens by itself as a resident walks toward it. Stepping into the elevator, the floor is automatically detected. And again, the lock on her apartment unit unbolts without requiring a key or a passcode. The hands-free access becomes possible thanks to a smartphone app that communicates with the entryways via Bluetooth. The technology was introduced by Korea's largest builder, Hyundai E&C, bringing the construction giant into a realm typically led by telecom operators.
We are enabling anyone with a smartphone to enter their apartment without ever using their hands. We are installing the system in phases from pre-sale units to sites currently under construction.
Another construction heavyweight, Daewoo E&C, has rolled out a smartphone app of its own called Smart Switch. The user can have the app send an automatic alert to apartment security staff upon a forced entry at the door. From the living room, one can control the lighting in the kitchen and the bedrooms, or schedule a time to switch it on or off.
You can monitor the power usage through the IoT Smart Switch app, which will encourage conservation.
Competition looks to be heating up in Korea's smart home sector as interest in a tech-enabled new world of convenience develops around something we're already very familiar with, the smartphone. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
High-fat, low-carb diet is becoming more popular here in Korea these days. Basically, this diet recommends people to eat plenty of high-fat products while cutting back on carbs. And supermarkets are actually feeling this new diet affecting their sales as products like cheese, butter, and meat are flying off the shelves. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
The latest fad in weight loss is to go high in fat and low in carbs. And perhaps not surprisingly, the largest beneficiary of this diet trend appears to be butter.
I was careful in the past because of my health and weight, but now I use it more liberally in my cooking.
According to one of the country's leading supermarket chains, Emart, sales of butter before the diet trend caught on was minus 19.2% compared to the same time last year. But from September 20th, it jumped by over 41% on year. Online shopping mall Gmarket also saw butter sales surge about 750% within a little over 2 weeks. Lotte Food, which accounts for about 80% of the domestic butter and margarine market, said it has received orders to produce 220 tons within the past 2 weeks. Other high-fat products like cheese and pork belly also saw an increase in sales by 10.3% and 7.6% respectively. But experts say maintaining this diet for more than 6 months without a proper meal plan may have health repercussions.
It could cause hypoglycemia or damaged vessels for patients with diabetes, high cholesterol, and those who suffered heart attacks, strokes, or hardening of the arteries.
Meanwhile, Emart said its sales of rice plunged even further into negative territory, recording a 37% decline in October, its lowest monthly level, as dieters stay away from carbs in their push to shed weight. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.